The Litmus Corporation case study is an assignment for organizational behavior due July 5th. Our case analysis is presented by Group 7, whose members consist of Jeff Groveman, Gabriela Lopez, Caroline Gonsmart, and Randy Schweinberg. Our case study begins by discussing the Litmus Corporation, which is a multi-billion-dollar global chemical firm dedicated to developing new marketable products. Litmus products are given a research and development period of 6 months, but if researchers don't make headway with the project, they must move on to the next idea. Litmus is not keen on sinking money into what it calls risky enterprise. This cyclical research, test, fail, move on process is actually the corporate norm, and we see that less than 10% of projects succeeded commercially for the company. Employees are not punished for ideas that are deemed unmarketable or infeasible by company standards after the 6-month time frame. Our case study introduces us to two main players. We have Group Manager Stanley Stan Carmine and Group Thought Leader Miles Grady. Both belong to what is called the Hyatt team. There are also 4 additional individuals the case study mentions: Marcin Katsevich, Randy Greer, Dan Sherman, and Ronald Daniels. We'll get to these gentlemen in just a moment. But first, let's explore who Stanley Stan Carmine is. Stanley is a middle-aged group manager who has been with Litmus Corporation for over 25 years. He has served in various roles at Litmus, including as a research assistant, chemical engineer, and in administrative positions. He was promoted to team leadership 3 years prior to the case study and likes the responsibility. But he admittedly doesn't always know how to, quote, lead the troops, and he wishes he had better motivational tactics. He does admit that he is open to self-improvement and looks forward to learning more about being a good manager. Miles Grady is the creative thought in the Hyatt team. Is he a mad scientist? Probably not. But we do know that he is a hard worker, and as I mentioned, he's the creative talent on the Hyatt team. He also gets frustrated when equipment malfunctions or he's interrupted in the lab, which is where he loves spending most of his time. Now moving on to the next 4 individuals who are mentioned in the case. Martin Kasevich and Randy Greer are team members 3 and 4 of the Hyatt team. Kasevich is the group's technical specialist, while Greer is the group research associate. Not much else is divulged about either gentleman, but we do know that Grady works with Kasevich extensively and enjoys their professional rapport and the products and productivity that they are able to make. Dan Sherman and Ronald Daniels are upper-level managers at Litmus Corporation. Sherman is Carmine's manager, while Daniels is the corporation's head of operational research. We don't know much else about these two either, but both seem to be good-natured in their discussions with Carmine. As members of upper management, both men must adhere to Litmus Corporation's project timelines and other policies. So, a few more case specifics. The Hyatt team recently developed a lightweight, very sturdy, casual disposable plate for their client called Lenore. Grady was actually responsible for coming up with the lightweight, sturdy plastic. And now the team is trying to prove the further viability and versatility of the new material in consumer markets beyond the casual dining niche. However, the deadline is rapidly approaching for higher-level review. And the team is looking to Grady for continued success, but he's not doing well under the pressure from the looming deadline. Manager Carmine does not know how to handle Grady for the optimum results he needs. Should he goad him on? Should he beg him? Should he demand results? The Hyatt team has already received 1 extension, and Carmine asks his bosses tentatively for a little more time until he can sort things out with Grady. Sherman and Daniels begrudgingly allow 3 additional weeks for research and development, but they question the Hyatt team's loyalty to what should just be another Litmus Corporation project. So Carmine still doesn't know what to do about Grady. And suddenly he remembers that there is a company work log that was designed for employees to be able to vent and discuss their successes and failures for the day. So this is his aha moment, and he decides to read Grady's logs. We're given a sample of logs over a period of months, and we discover that Grady is the most efficient working when he's left alone or in relative quiet with technical specialist Krasevich, or he is not tasked with admin work or other out-of-lab tests, or he has had some success from work that he's already doing. So this gives Carmine an invaluable insight into his team members' strategy and needs for the work environment. Our primary issue or main dilemma is that Stan Carmine does not know how to foster Miles Grady's creative genius as Grady works to develop the plastic prototype under a deadline. Several theories from the Tosi Pilati text helped us to explain the issues in the Litmus Corporation case. Of the relevant theories we pulled from the text, we found the general adaptation syndrome to be the first that was pertinent to this case study. We determined from the 3 physiological reaction stages of the general adaptation syndrome model that Grady is displaying symptoms characteristic of the second stage, the resistance stage. At this stage, the body makes efforts to adapt to perceived stressors. Prolonged exposure may cause fatigue, loss of concentration, and irritability as evidenced by Grady's mini meltdown. In light of this incident, Stanley Carmine's primary objective is to prevent Grady from burning out and entering the exhaustion stage. At this point, the project would come to its inevitable end, and Grady would need time to fully recover from the stress-induced degradation. The mini meltdown is demonstrated in the opening sentences of the case study, in which Carmine finds Grady twiddling with a machine. Next, we determine that Grady is experiencing psychological strains directly related to negative cognitive appraisals of factors present in the psychological stress environment, such as his work setting, work relationships, and other non-work factors. An example of a work setting factor is a 6-month time restriction imposed by company policy on teams working on new business development projects. Such work-setting strains may also be heightened by Grady's external locus of control, making him more susceptible to burning out due to a perceived lack of influence over the workplace. Another work-related factor that seems to be causing some strain is Grady's work relationship with his manager, Carmine. The project deadline is an obvious concern to Carmine, and because of this, he tends to schedule unnecessary project status meetings that rehash the same information that Grady has already conveyed to him. Lastly, Grady's primary sources of stress originate from both occupational and organizational factors, as well as role pressures. We have concluded that Grady's occupation requires high psychological demands and high decision control intrinsic to his field of work. The organizational factors stem from the company's bureaucratic system of rules and procedures, instituted to minimize the time and costs spent on dead-end projects. Finally, Grady must multitask to fulfill the many demanding roles he has. This is presumably the major source of his stress. After examining all of the angles of our analysis, we identified several viable options. We weighed the pros and cons of each alternative solution within the context of the Litmus Corporation case, while asking the questions our applied theories posed. The first alternative we came up with would involve Carmine delegating some of Grady's responsibilities to other team members. This would allow Grady to focus solely on the project without being sidetracked. The downside to this option is that it may negatively affect the team's performance if members become overwhelmed by their added responsibilities. The second viable solution we came up with would involve hiring a new assistant to undertake Grady's administrative tasks. This would allow Grady to focus solely on the project without the burden of spending time on pesky paperwork and administration. However, some potential difficulties with this approach include the company's inability to find someone quickly to fill the position, and that the constraints of the project can ramp up fairly quickly. Our last viable solution would be to extend the deadline. This would remove the pressure of the looming date from Grady, but there's no guarantee of success in that time, and it could still be a waste of time, money, and resources. The team may also lose credibility, and Grady might work better under the tight pressure of a deadline. Ultimately, our group determined that a 2-part plan of action would be best suited for Grady. In the short term, tasks need to be delegated to some of Grady's team members, and the team needs to understand his work needs and stressors. In the long term, Carmine should hire Grady an assistant to take care of administrative needs, fill out paperwork, and ensure that Grady has ample lab time scheduled. In this way, Grady will be able to achieve success both for himself and for Litmus Corporation.